we're going to put in a lapped zipper. Now, we're putting our zippers, lapped and centered, regular zippers that is, in with a 3/4 inch seam allowance. So this zipper is just a little bit longer than my 8-inch squares, or not, that was wrong. Shorter than my 8 inches. Where the zipper is going to stop, I will generally have a notch in my pattern. So I know that above that notch, where the zipper will be, I want to baste my fabric together at the 3/4 inch. So basting is 5 on your stitch length. 3/4 inch over here. And you don't need to backstitch when you're basting. This is just a temporary stitch. When I get to my notch, I'll just stop and then return to regular stitch length. To close up the rest of my seam. Just imagine if this were on a skirt or something. This is the remaining part of the back seam of a skirt. I'm going to press it open. Now we have to switch to our zipper foot. Okay, my zipper is going to be in my garment like this. If I want, for the lapped zipper, the stitching to be on this left side, then my first operation will be on the right side, seam allowance only. What we're going to do is face to face, so right side of the zipper or the face of the zipper to the right side of the seam allowance on the right side of our project, and line up those teeth at our basted seam there. And I want to make sure that my end is aligned with where I've got my regular stitching started, where my notch was. So we're going to baste just down the center of our zipper tape. So I'm back at the 5 stitch length, and I'm only stitching through the 1 layer of seam allowance and my zipper tape. Just right down the center. Usually there's a bit of a pattern in the weave that helps you just guide yourself down the center. Keep the teeth right at that opening. All the way down. Now we press it in. So here's how it was basted. And when I press, I'm going to fold it back so that I'm getting still just the seam allowance. There's nothing of the garment, if you will, in this business right here against the teeth. So I'm pressing that. I want the initial basted closure to be, you know, 1/8 or so away from that fold. I'm going to stitch now at regular stitch length, and I'm going to just come right against this fold. I'm only stitching through seam allowance and zipper tape. And sometimes it's a little hard to work your way around the pull, so we can bring the pull down, do some stitches. Leave the needle down, move the pull out of the way. Back stitch when we get to the bottom. Double check that we didn't catch anything we weren't supposed to. We're good. And now our last stitch is the one that we see. So lap zippers usually just kind of come over and make like a right angle. Sometimes you'll see a slant instead of the right angle at the bottom. But it's going to be about 3/8 to 1/2 of an inch to the side. We can't go much wider because then we'll fall off our seam allowance here. But we do have to be on the other side of the zipper teeth. So stitching through now, sample the garment and seam allowance. So we can't do the trick of moving the zipper pull out of the way now. If we need to remind ourselves of where we're ending, we can put a pin. You want to make sure that you're ending where those regular stitches were starting. If you end above them where there's still basting, then when you remove your basting stitch, you have a hole in your seam. So I'm going to take one more stitch, pivot, and come across. And I am going to back stitch. I don't want to go past my seam there, just right to it. Double check that I like my stitches. If I deem them to be acceptable, then we can remove that initial basting stitch. Should come out pretty easily. Got a seam ripper, get it. Sometimes people will break them in spots before they do this. There we go. give her a good press, and that's what we want it to look like. We don't want to see that stitching. We definitely don't want to see the zipper at all. So it's got the right amount of lap there. And no hole at the bottom. Yay.